Hello, everybody. We know the last thing you need is another fitness podcast to catch you up on the newest trends, fad diets, and fictitious fat blasting workouts that will be dead in the coming years and decades. Enter us. My name is Tony. This is Marianna, and we made Fitness Stuff podcast to make exercise and nutrition science practical. Our goal is to expose misinformation in the industry by providing only evidence-based education, where today we just wrapped up with my good friend, Zach Coen, the dietitian with a beard. And we dove into a lot of topics that I think honestly are going to help a lot of people. He runs a massively successful meal prep business as well. But today we decided to tackle the topic of clean eating and why it might not be good as you think. Zach is a registered dietitian, to clarify. Big difference from people who call themselves nutritionists. Requirement of over a bachelor's in dietetics, over 1,200 hours of dietetic internship, and must pass a national exam with 75 hours of continued education. Zach has accumulated 1.3 million avid and engaged followers, and his education-based content teaching people how to lose weight, keep it off, and live an overall stronger, healthier, longer life. Me and Marianna and I, we're pumped to show you this one. So, this is my good friend Zach. Marianna and I are having on the podcast today. Zach is the dietitian with a beard, right? He is an RDN, registered dietitian. This is what we were just talking about before the show. I think it was a good place to start. The difference between dietitians and nutritionists, what it's to get that RD label behind your name. Let me just kind of list off a couple basics. So to clarify, the difference is if you consider yourself a nutritionist, right? Depending on the state in which you practice, you can call yourself a nutritionist without any formal nutrition education, training, licensing, or certification. Right now, is it correct that I could label myself as a nutritionist right this second?
Yeah.
Just because I decided so. Okay, great. Refer to me as that from now on. No, to be considered an RD, in the past, I think Marianna was just catching me up, this just changed. In the past, you need at least a bachelor's, now a master's in dietetics, at least 1,200 hours of dietetic internship. You have to pass the national exam by the Commission on Dietetic Registration and continue your education with 75 hours of CEUs after that. Mm-hmm. Pretty massive difference. Did that kind of cover it up a little bit?
Yeah. And then I live in a licensure state. I'm in Florida. So on top of the 75 hours per every 5 years, I have to do an additional 35 hours every 3 years to renew my license as a licensed nutritionist in the state of Florida.
Oh, yeah, that's what you were telling me about yesterday.
Yeah, different states have different licensure laws, so it just depends on the state you live in.
Okay, So and that's what we were talking about, just the damage, because we're all on social media, so I think that's where the conversation was headed, in the misinformation of people who, at least what we think, categorize nutritionist and dietitian as one and the same, when they couldn't be further from the truth. Like the person who's cleaning windows outside could say, I'm a nutritionist now.
Yeah.
RD is hard work. A long, hard road to become an RD, not something you can just say, I'm going to go pass a weekend course and decide to be one. That's why we wanted to have you on the show today, is we were going to talk about the topic of clean eating, but why I think it's so important that we make that differentiation first of nutritionist versus dietitian. When we look on social media and we talk about the cause of misinformation, right? Where's the root? Where is it coming from? I think titles and not understanding titles is a big piece of it, because how many nutritionists, quote unquote, that we were just talking about, I don't know if we don't want to name drop or anything like that, but it's ridiculous, right?
Yeah. It's just so crazy to me how you look at the field of nutrition, even just giving any nutrition advice in general. And there's so much deception that is allowed to continue. I make this analogy all the time. If I'm a mechanic, who's trying to come after my job and tell me I'm a mechanic? Because, oh my God, if you're not a mechanic and you go and fuck up someone's car, they're going to have it out for you. Yep. First of all, no one's going to trust you in the first place. But when it comes to diet, it's this person knows what they're talking about. If their shared experience with mine is applicable, I can relate to them. I trust them.
Yeah. I've eaten food all my life. I know what I'm talking about. It really comes down to, I've got experience in food. Trust me, this is what I've noticed throughout my 40 years on this earth from eating this food, X, Y, and Z. And it really comes down to learning to trust the research instead of the anecdotes.
I was going to say, makes a lot of sense. Even this is an interesting thing I just popped in my head. The anecdotal experience is no one accidentally messes, like mechanic experience, no one accidentally just messes around with their car and fixes their broken engine. People will go keto or try some ridiculous whatever lose weight, not understand why, but think, oh, I just fixed the problem. That's the solution, right? Because in nutrition, there's, and this is what we talk about, that's hard, like so much gray room. It's not just black and white, hardly any absolutes. There's certain principles that really determine how your body changes, but it can be implied or applied in countless ways where a lot of other metrics in life or a lot of areas in life can't, like, don't have that same theme, right? Where it can't, you can't see success a million different ways like you can in nutrition, right? Would that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous. So I was excited because when Zach and I connected a couple of days ago again, Zach's big on meal prep. I was going to say, if you haven't seen him, everyone's seen him. He's big on meal prep, which is absolutely huge. And that's what we were planning on talking about initially. But when we talked about it more, us three all share a very common theme and idea about nutrition, right? A more flexible approach. And the word clean eating came up. I want to just continue. I'm going to do quote unquote like 100 times this episode. My fingers are going to be sore. But the topic of clean eating, because we all hate that term, is what you and I decided on talking about today. I'm going to ask you this. What is clean eating? Like, just for people who don't understand it, what is clean eating?
According to society, what is clean eating?
Yes, because then we'll go over and just wreck the actual.
Depending on who you ask, I mean, it could be a short ingredient list. It could be stuff that's sourced from all natural ingredients. It could be dairy free. It could be animal protein free. It could be pesticide free. Depending on who you ask, clean eating, it has a different definition. But I think for the most part, people assume clean eating is just means eating healthy. Again, has a different definition for everybody that you ask.
Yeah. And Zach, I'm not sure if you've read this before. I started reading it off to Tony the other day. I think the listeners would like this. We've got the 12 rules of clean eating here. I'm just going to list them off real quick.
Is this from the girl that started clean eating? The girl who coined it? Okay, wait.
Yes.
Zach, you're actually going to really like this. The girl that started clean eating however many years ago.
I'll have to pull that up after because people don't really know that this was actually a diet. The clean eating diet started in the early 2000s. People who say it's a lifestyle, that's good for you. But let's go through these 12 rules. First of all, eat real food. Second, one ingredient. Number 3, read the label. 4, no numbers. 5, natural sweeteners. Avoid foods with added sugar and artificial sweeteners. Okay. 6, be mindful. Always know where your food comes from. 7, only choose whole grains. No white flour. 8, drink water. 9, snack on clean foods. Okay. 10, load up on the vegetables, organic vegetables in parentheses. 11, only eat good fat. 12, portion control. So very specific, I would say.
Yeah. So I would agree with drink water and portion control.
I was going to say number 8. That was a good rule. Drink water.
And the vegetables would have been fine if she would have left off the specifically organic.
The funny part about when I was listening to that list is I'm like, because I think I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of people listening hear that list and they're like, what's wrong with it? Like, we understand, we see a lot of holes in that. But I think a lot of people hear that list and they're like, what's wrong with eating a clean vegetable? And I think it's because that's like the surface. But if you ask one question about what each rule is, okay, when it says eat clean snacks, what's a clean snack? What's not a clean snack? Like there's no clear definitions on any of those rules, except for, like you said, drink water and meal portion.
So here's the thing, so I think as a dietitian, if I were to read that list and say, this is ridiculous, they take it as, like you said, what's wrong with it? There's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things. The problem is it creates this dogmatic mindset to where this is the only thing you can eat. If you eat anything that doesn't apply to this list, you're unhealthy, you're killing yourself, you're eating toxins, these foods are inflammatory, like all this just misinformation that kind of surrounds nutrition right now. There's nothing wrong with following those steps, but there's also nothing wrong with venturing away from those steps either.
Yeah, it's not a prison. It's like a guideline, but not a prison. You're not trapped inside of it, which is here.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think the first thing that we should probably talk about is some of the problems that I think we've all shared, the problems with the idea of clean eating. Because there's a lot, right? There's the trend towards right, the more disordered eating patterns. There's the trend of, well, you can't really clearly define it. So anything you can't really define is like not something you should base your actions off of. There's a lot of problems about it. So let's start with, I think the disordered eating habits is going to be a fun one to dive into next. But let's talk about the problems that you and I were talking about. You can't define what clean eating is, right? You're essentially labeling foods as good and bad. If you label it like that, depending on who you ask, that list is going to be different every single time.
If you're on TikTok at all, like you've probably seen the guy that says the water we drink is toxic. You've seen that oils are toxic and inflammatory. You've seen people say that eating animal protein is killing us. You've seen people that say eating eggs are killing us, dairy, grains. There's even a few people that are saying, do not eat fruits and vegetables because they're killing you.
They're bullshit. No, that's what I've heard.
So again, depending on which channels you follow and who you choose to listen to and believe, like at the end of all of that, if you believe everything you hear, you're left with eating absolutely nothing.
That we said, summed it up perfectly. If you eat clean to every group's definition, you're going to have an empty plate. And that is a huge, massive problem.
I love that you just said that, because if you are saying this, if you truly eat, sleep, breathe this clean eating diet, and this is how you believe everyone should eat, I better not see one toxic ingredient in your skincare, your shampoo, your hand soap, your pots, your pans, everything, because the same thing applies. And the hypocrisy in that statement of leading a clean lifestyle. All right, let's see what else you're using that may have chemicals in it.
Yeah, I posted that controversial "It's okay to eat a Reese's" video, and I got into it with a few different commenters. And this one guy was just bashing me, saying that I was spreading misinformation. So I ended up going to his page, and he's got videos of him eating fried chicken and drinking beer. And I'm like, so eating a Reese's is spreading misinformation and terrible for your health, but eating fried chicken and beer, perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
He went on to say, well, I don't do that all the time. I'm not saying eat a Reese's every single day and only eat Reese's. Again, it comes down to that all or nothing mindset and, practicing moderation.
Yeah. The hypocrisy kills me, because it's the same people. It's like, we were talking about this on a different episode, the LA influencers who do like a what I eat in a day, and it's like $200 worth of like only organic.
Yeah.
They'll videotape that, and it's like, go drink half a bottle of tequila, eat chicken wings at night, stuff like this. And then people have this idea in their head, wait, I have to eat like that clean, quote unquote.
Yeah.
If I want to see progress, it's only what they're showing. So I think, okay, problem wise, that's probably the biggest one. It's a prison that you're locked in. And we know this all just based on working with clients in the past, having our own lives, just based on lifestyles and how much they change, those prison techniques don't work very long.
No, not at all. It's not sustainable. It creates this mindset of you're holding yourself to this unrealistic standard of, I can't do this. And we all know food is delicious. Like, the food industry has done a really good job of making food delicious. Like, these hyper palatable foods that people think are absolutely off limits when you're trying to be healthy, lose weight, what have you. And the moment that you stray away from this list and eat one of these foods that you think are off limits or you've labeled as bad or unclean, you really start to feel defeated, and it feeds into that yo-yo diet.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is such a good point to make, because it's not sustainable to have that black and white thinking. And what Tony and I were going through before when we were thinking about this topic, the people who really need this advice, again, I'm just going to read off a statistic, 41.9% of Americans fall into the obese category. And again, BMI has its issues, but it is helpful for understanding populations and the health risks associated with populations. And telling someone to go eat clean and avoid all of these foods that they readily have access to, because again, food access is also an issue. How is that sustainable? How are you going to go tell someone that to switch their diet, this is exactly what they need to do? They have to cut out X, Y, Z. How do you learn how to have moderation? Our society, and in America, unfortunately, in the school system, when you're brought up, that's not taught. That's not understood. So you're just expecting someone to unlearn decades of they were brought up and what they know. That's also something that frustrates me. And I think you could probably speak to that a little bit too, understanding public health nutrition and how much of a problem that could be.
Yeah. And a lot of times when you do follow somebody, like you mentioned, the $200 of food, what I eat in a day, there's this almost like classist content that you can't expect everybody to have not just the finances that you have, but the food access. There are food deserts all over the world. You can't expect everybody to, well, let me just pop in my Tesla and drive down to the local farmer's market and grab some fresh organic produce. That's not a realistic, feasible thing for everybody.
That's literally the exact example we used like a couple of weeks ago. It's like the LA person who lives next to the beach year round where it's warm, next to like in California, one of the largest just food manufacturers in the whole world. Okay.
Yeah.
You got a little bit easier access than everybody else, but it's not real. But okay, back to the meaningful change. That was huge. Like Marianna said, 41, this number blew my mind. 41.9% is obese, not just overweight, but obese, right? 30 plus BMI, which BMI has a problem. But if you're 30 plus, you most certainly have a too high body fat percentage that would be considered unhealthy, that sees potential health risks down the road. If you're overweight, that's where there's some ambiguity where, Zach, I think you and I would probably be in the overweight category, but obese is different. That's almost half the people. And like you said, Marianna, this is not just a quick change. This is meaningful change. And for some reason with diet, and I think this is what we should talk about, or I have a question about for you, Zach. Meaningful change happens one small step at a time. And this is just look at any other aspect of life. As someone grows, and let's look at even like politics. If you are Republican and end up Democrat, that doesn't happen overnight, or vice versa. Yeah. If you love someone and then don't love someone, or what vice versa, it doesn't happen. It's one small step. But for some reason, when it comes to nutrition, like Marianna said, you have decades of learning to eat fast food. People are raised like this, right? My parents eating McDonald's 3 or 4 times per week. People are raised by eating fast food, by eating quick, by eating accessible, by also not being educated about nutrition. Yeah. And for this meaningful change, they decide, no, I can't take it one step at a time. It's black or white. I eat out 6 times per week. I eat candy bars. I eat Reese's every single night. So it's a problem when people like you say, well, hey, it's okay to have that Reese's. We're not going to say, let's do a total 180. Let's just make a small change today and a small change tomorrow and like slowly change. And people have a problem with that. Like, why do people have such an issue, do you think, with taking nutrition and that kind of slow and meaningful, like everything else? And why is it so black and white?
Yeah. I don't think any of us are the same people that we were 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe 5 years, maybe last year. We change as a person, as we grow, we change our mindset, we change our views, we change our opinions on the world. And we don't develop these views of food overnight. Like you said, it takes years, but for some reason, when you just decide to make a change in your life, as far as your dietary patterns, people have this misconception that it is going to happen overnight. And I contribute a lot of that to diet culture because it's so predatory. They push this narrative of lose X number of pounds in 30 days. And they just promote these unrealistic, unsustainable changes in body composition and just food intake that people have come to think that, oh, it must be how it is because I saw this person on TV. They did it. This before and after picture. There's no way it was Photoshop. There's no way that they're deceiving me in any way. And for some reason, diet, and I don't know why people think that's the one thing in their life that can change overnight. I can't think of one example that is comparable to the mindset around nutrition.
Yeah. It's like, I want to be a lawyer. Okay, go to law school for 6 years.
Yeah.
No, I want it tomorrow. Like, what?
So this is my opinion. Just want to make that clear. But food and eating is one of the very few things that we in our life have full autonomy in. We have control over that, of course, within the confines of our environment, what we have access to. But you can't just say out of sight, out of mind. You can't just ignore it. You need it. And our whole lives, for the majority of us, we grow up with, okay, we have our parents, we have what we have access to, what's there, the dinner on the table, that's there, the food that we have in the house, that's there, that's what I'm eating. And then all of a sudden, you become an adult, wherever you go, you leave high school. This is I'm responsible for that? 3 meals a day? 3? Like me, no one else is telling me what to do. When you really look out in terms of our society, especially in the US, we don't have that much control in a lot of aspects of our life and this system that we live in a lot of the time. And then it's just like food is, yep, go ahead. And so it forces people to seek education and find trust somewhere, some support. It just, I'm sure Zach, you hear all the time, what do I eat? Tell me what to do. I just want to know what to eat.
Yeah. Give me a meal plan.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet you get asked for meal plan. Do you do a meal plan?
Yeah.
How many DMs?
Meal plan, it's a great tool to get somebody started.
Yeah.
Once you spoon feed them for too long, are you really learning anything? Like, you learning anything about portion size, how to build your plate? You need to be sustainable. You need to be able to continue progressing. You can't pay for a coach all your life. You might be able to, but
you don't want, no one wants to do that.
Whenever I get asked if I make meal plans by my clients and I like have a meal planning guide with a lot of those tools that you just talked about, I'm like, no, because I want you to leave. I want you to feel comfortable to be like, Marianna, I don't need you anymore. I got this.
Yeah.
And constantly giving you something that you don't have to learn how to make, how to incorporate into your lifestyle. Who's that helping? My bank account?
I do a sample meal plan once a month on my Patreon, just using just my recipes, but it's just to show people, okay, this is what he did. This is what I can do to continue doing that.
Because meal planning just puts you, if you get a meal plan, it puts you in a prison again, like we talked about, where if you're in the prison, you're going to see progress. But as soon as you get outside and vary from the prison, which you will, because you can't stay in that prison for your whole life, it's going to fail. And then that's the problem without educating them is once they're outside the prison, they don't know how to succeed except for, oh, that meal plan worked. I need to do that to see success. Where like a service, what was it? Like Eat This Much, Marianna and I talk about it, where it gives you meal plan ideas. It's a helpful tool so you can start to learn the flexible approach of, oh, maybe I don't want this exact lunch or dinner, but I can have these other 10 that will still give me my progress. Like, oh, it's not the exact meal that's making my progress or determining progress.
Yeah.
It's the energy balance. It's the macro composition. That's what's really driving it. Let's talk about this. And I think it would be a good piggyback off of your video, which if you're unfamiliar, Zach just posted a video the other day that went viral overnight. It was comparing a Reese's and a Larabar, right?
And sorry to all the Reese's connoisseurs for calling it a bar. And apparently it's Reese's cups.
Yeah, see, you didn't even just piss off the people who didn't want you to do Reese's. You pissed off the Reese's people for calling. That's actually funny.
Yeah.
But it was a video. It was breaking down under 2 boxes where it was the calorie intake and the macro distribution, right? The protein, carb, fat of each thing under the box. And you don't know what's under the box. Taking them through, you pull out the box and you realize that this quote unquote healthy branded bar, it's healthy, it's great, it's whatever, has the same energy balance, the same macro distribution as 2 Reese's cups. And I think people see that and we're like, well, what about the micro versus macros? I think people, once they understand like energy balance and macro distribution is ultimately what determines how your body changes. That's the first step that I want to ask you about. And then really the importance, because like in that video, you're not telling people to ignore micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. You're not saying eat Reese's every single day, but that's what I think people take it as is, oh, you're telling me that I can just go purge on whatever and be cool with it. Can you tell people real quick, if clean eating's not the answer, right? Like what should people focus their attention on? What should they put their efforts in learning more about?
So I push 3 components of health and weight loss. It's balance, moderation, and variety. You obviously have to have some sort of balance. It's okay to eat a chicken breast for lunch. It's also okay to have a Reese's for a snack. Moderation, you don't want to overconsume your calories. You need to have some sort of understanding of energy balance, calories, understanding what your body specifically needs in order to lose weight, maintain your weight, gain weight, whatever your goals are. And then variety. So studies show that broccoli is great, but should you only eat broccoli as your vegetable? Probably not. You need to add some variety in there for overall health and gut health and your microbiome and different micronutrients. Like every fruit and vegetable is going to have a different micronutrient profile. So eating a variety kind of gives you that full picture. Just like if you're vegan, obviously you have incomplete proteins, but if you're eating a balanced diet of variety, you probably don't need to obsess over, oh, is this a complete protein? You have complementary proteins that they're going to come together and form a complete protein. So that's where the variety kind of comes in.
It's huge.
But just understanding with anything, I think it all starts with, I think we can all agree, calories. Like you need to have an understanding of energy balance. And I know, Tony, you're big on macros, and I don't want you to come at me for this, but for the general population, I don't really promote tracking macros, at least not full macros.
It's more
advise people to track calories and protein because carbs and fat, they're very individualized. Like I would never expect somebody that really loves bread and pasta to do low carb. I would never expect somebody that loves eggs and bacon to do low fat. So unless you have a specific dietary need, like an actual diagnosed reason for tracking fat or carbs, they're going to come naturally. They're very interchangeable. And any reputable weight loss study, they always have to match calories and protein.
Yeah.
Those are the two things they have to match to figure out, okay, which one of these diets work best. And in the end, depending on the results, like they're typically going to be about the same results.
Yeah.
As long as calories and protein are matched, high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat, whatever. It really comes down to your personal preference.
Okay, 100%. Because I say macros and macro distribution a lot. Because I even say calories are king, macros are queen, kind of thing. But when it comes down to that, and like when you really dive into it on a client to client basis, right? Calories and protein is probably where 80-90% of people need to worry about. Nothing real, like it's more performance and lifestyle based, where it's like,
you've got the elite athlete, somebody with a specific performance goal that can definitely help.
That's when most clients come in, because I do talk a lot about macros, but they're like, what about carbs and fats? Because we'll just have a calorie goal first, and sometimes even just a protein goal before I even talk about calories, because the secondary things that come from like just increasing your protein intake naturally fills people up, decreases their overall intake. Then we can worry about calories. But those are the two that 90% of people are going to see their progress from. Doesn't matter if you're high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat. I tell people, go for what your lifestyle's kind of built around now. If you naturally consume more fats, you don't need to change that right now. Like you don't need to worry about, same thing with carbs. If you love carbs, if you have high carb, you don't need to worry about that, because exactly in research, it's identical progress. If your calories, your protein intake match, it does not matter where those, it's at like the high performing level that the carbs and the fats start to matter over time. But again, normal people, they got to worry about those two things, right? Their calorie intake.
My content and my approach is all about sustainability, and simple is sustainable. And the more variables and the more steps you add into your journey, the less sustainable it's typically going to be. So if you can just not worry about carbs and fats, like that's one less step you have to think about, one less step you have to worry about, and you can still make progress.
I think it's especially because this is what I always say is like, it's great to have a plan A, but you need to have a plan B, because plan A doesn't always happen, right? Like today, I planned on waking up, going to the gym, having my Friday treat, my little latte and a burrito before I have lunch and dinner. But sometimes we might run over on a podcast. I might not have the time to make the lunch that I was going to. Same thing. If it's after work, you were going to go make dinner at home, but now it's happy hour with the friends, you should learn, like, that doesn't mean you're falling off your nutrition, your progress. If you understand those principles of, I'm hitting my calories today, I'm hitting my protein, I was going to have a whatever higher carb, whatever this for dinner at home with the family. Now I'm having a little higher fat bar food. If you still hit those first two goals, you're going to see identical progress. Is the big piece of it. And I think one thing is, I want to throw this in just before we get off topic, because I freaking love it. I think you touched on it. When people say, will you make progress quicker with clean eating? I think Mike Matthews actually brought this up, and this is where I learned from, is if you look at the research of, let's observe, right, who's probably follows clean eating the strictest. Usually bodybuilders, physique competitors, before leading up to prep, before they step on stage.
I don't think so, Tony. I'm going to argue against it. Definitely, I feel like bodybuilders do not eat clean.
No, I'm saying leading up to prep. Leading up to prep on stage is when it's chicken, it's rice, it's broccoli.
Oh yeah.
Just
if you factor in like the protein powders, the gums that make the volume of your meals.
Yeah, that's not clean. According to some influencers, their protein powders are clean.
Oh yeah, theirs are clean, but others aren't.
Yeah.
That's just a freaking another video. But yeah, it's like, if you look at, this is the most interesting thing, is you look at the physique competitors, and what I think most people see is, this is healthy, right? Ridiculously low body fat percentage, but they're eating very rigid leading up to prep, right?
Perfect.
Chicken, rice, broccoli, asparagus, right? There's not a lot of variance outside of that. When you test and get blood tests and full panel blood tests done on them afterwards, these are the people that you see ridiculously deficient in certain micronutrients. Their endocrine system is beyond screwed up. Their testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, it's like specifically. These are the least healthy blood tests in people who they're not eating fast food. They're not eating Reese's cups every day leading up to prep, right? Afterwards and before, it's not what I'm talking about. But that's not a better way to do things, I think, is the argument that I was trying to prove right there. And it's cutting out all the bad crap because you don't have variety. You're going to be severely less.
Very little variety in those like stage prep diets. Like there's very little variety. They have like the 5 staples that they stick to, and that's all they eat for 6, 8, 12 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So no variety, no bad.
And you have women out here completely losing their menstrual cycle and not having that conversation enough. And it's just, let's have that conversation, because if we're going to people fearmonger all the time, let's have something to actually be afraid of, because that's going to ruin your health in the long term.
Seriously.
So it's just so crazy to me what people choose to fearmonger, that it's like, oh, there are actually real potential implications of significantly cutting out foods in your diet, and then you bleed into the more disordered area, and it's just this, it can be this ripple effect. But
I really think that the weight loss, diet, nutrition realm really, I think they're starting to pay more attention to it, but like for years they've neglected the mental aspect of it. How you can really start to form this like really terrible skewed view on food and nutrition. Like if you realize that you are saying no to things in life that you would typically say yes to because of your goals or nutrition or dietary needs or patterns, then that's probably a real problem. If you can't go to a wedding because they're going to be serving nothing but foods that have carbs in it, and you don't want people to look at you differently, or you can't go out to eat with your family because they're going to a steakhouse and you're cutting out animal fat. Like there's a real need to pay attention to the effects it can have on your overall in the long run.
Yeah. And I think I actually made a video on this the other day. People get especially frustrated with dietitians for having that conversation about saying you can eat the sugar. Actually, you should eat this Reese's. And people are like, oh, you don't care about our health. I don't trust you because you're hiding something, or they just don't want you to know that this is bad for you. It's addicting. And no, you don't see the side that we see in terms of how much this affects people mentally and leads to so many disordered eating habits, so many issues down the road in terms of your relationship with food, your relationship with others, and losing out on these pivotal years of your life because you're letting food control you. And something I always say to my clients, if they're like, yeah, I have vacation coming up, what should I do? Or I'm going to this event. I'm like, cool. See, like, talk to you when you get back, have fun. Like my goal, I'm not going to tell you how to eat on vacation. My goal is indifference. I want you to, when you're done with this, I want you to feel indifferent towards going on vacation about food. I don't want that to be the first thought in your head. Because when we hyperfixate, that's when we lose control. If we, for so long, you start to lose control because it's this black and white thinking of yes, no, up, down. No, I just want you to, when you're going on vacation, not really care about food. So when you come back, you don't feel like you have to start over, and you don't feel like you need to binge because it's only a week. Sorry, I'm getting heated about this, but I'm sure you.
Yeah, no, that's right there. That binging is a big word because a lot of people, they either neglect or they downplay the effect of the restrict and binge cycle. It is a very real problem in the diet realm. Like when you cut out these foods, your body still craves them. You don't just, again, change your dietary preferences and cravings overnight. If you've been eating Reese's your entire life and you suddenly wake up and say, no more Reese's ever again, you restrict that Reese's long enough, you're eventually going to give in, you're going to cave, you're going to binge. And then that just starts this whole cycle of guilt and feeling like a failure and giving up and bounce back weight regain and that endless freaking cycle.
Yeah, which is because your company is called, is it Mind? it starts with mind.
Mind, body, and nutrition.
It starts with mind, right? Like, I think that's what people always,
absolutely.
because how many times you hear arbitrary numbers thrown around? Oh, it's 80% nutrition, 20% training. It's like, what about the biggest freaking piece?
Absolutely.
I was going to say, Marianna, how does clean eating feed into that?
Oh my goodness. It depends on the person, but it is so much of that black and white. This is off limits. This is, you can eat this in terms of added sugar, artificial ingredients, long labels, only having whole foods, nothing in a package. That is black and white thinking. So in terms of you listening to your brain and your desires and what you want and allowing yourself to say, hey, you know what? I do really want a Reese's cup tonight after dinner. Like, I'm so excited to have it, enjoy it, move on from my life. It's, oh, I really want this and I can't have it. I'm not going to eat it. And people are like, oh, you don't know that that's going to happen. No, oftentimes that does happen when clean eating becomes this habit of rewarding yourself because you were only eating clean. It makes what you desired subconsciously so much more enticing and palatable. And it's really hard to limit those noises. And I guess, Zach, I would love you to talk about, if you have any insight on this, but how this can lead into maybe not developing anorexia, but maybe orthorexic tendencies, what the similarities are between this clean eating diet and orthorexia in terms of that obsession with kind of how you're eating.
I think as humans, we tend to overfixate and become obsessed with a lot of things in our life. Like you mentioned earlier, we have full control over the foods that we eat, but for some reason we assign these labels and these rules to these foods. When you think of pizza, you think of, oh, it's a weekend food. Why is it a weekend food? Why can't it just be
food,
a freaking Wednesday
breakfast food?
Why are these rules given to these certain foods? Why do you feel like you have no control around cake when you go to a birthday party, when you're a whole ass adult? Like, you can go to Publix or Walmart and buy a freaking cake and bring it home and have a slice whenever you want. It doesn't have to be a birthday. It doesn't have to be a special occasion. There are no foods that are off limits, and there's really no rules surrounding these foods. These are societal stigmas that are ingrained in us over the years to where we think that, oh, I can't have this. And like, where does it really stem from? There's really no reason for these rules, then it's just the norm.
Yeah.
And once you become so ingrained in this mentality, you can really start to, it really starts to affect your mental health. So if you think about it, you're doing this for physical health, right? You're trying to lose weight, trying to eat better, what have you, for physical health. Yet your mental stress and mental acrobats that you're going through trying to eat healthy and stick to this unsustainable diet is probably causing more harm to your physical health just because of the added stress than eating the occasional piece of cake or eating the occasional slice of pizza.
Yeah.
And may I add a couple comments that I've gotten back when we've talked about something similar is people hear that, I think, because 100% agree, right? It's something you should probably have in your diet. But people hear that, and I think this jumps onto the labels that I want to discuss, like the healthy versus unhealthy, is they hear that and they're like, well, okay, but I can't just have one slice of pizza. I can't just have one Reese's cup. But I think it's maybe just based on framing in their heads of this is bad, this is good, or this is healthy, this is unhealthy. Where we know a single food can't be healthy or unhealthy. A diet as a whole, a lifestyle as a whole, that can be unhealthy. But a food on its own can't be. And I think, do you think it's the labeling and the framing in their head of why people hear that and they're like, well, I can't just have one. I can't just have.
It's very individualized. So I have met people who they have what's called their binge trigger. So my wife, she's an RBT. She's becoming a BCBA. She works with a lot of eating disorders. So she worked at an eating disorder facility where they do what's called food exposure therapy. So they have these fear foods. And sometimes it's just a matter of, say somebody is anorexic and they have this crippling fear of bread, carbs, right? They'll put a piece of bread in front of them and just make them sit there for X number of seconds, X number of minutes. You don't have to eat it. You don't have to look at it. Just being close to it, being next to it is some sort of exposure therapy. And it really just all comes back to your mental state. There are people who feel like they just have no self-control when it comes to certain foods. And exposing yourself to these foods and reframing your mindset around so you have the scarcity versus abundance mindset. Right? So there's people that can't have Reese's in the house because they think they'll absolutely binge on them, as opposed to somebody, if you eat enough Reese's, you're probably going to get sick of them to where you think about it and now you're like, I've had so many in the last week. I'm burnt out. I want something else. Is it really a binge trigger, or is it because you've restricted them, labeled them as a binge trigger for so long? That's what you've conditioned your mind to believe. It's a learned behavior. Every learned behavior can be unlearned or replaced with different learned behaviors.
Yeah. And there's some interesting research out there in terms of looking at the reward centers that go off in people's brains who have binge eating disorder and how that affects areas in your brain when you're placed in front of certain foods that would be labeled as those fear foods. And the reward centers are so much more heightened and powerful in people with binge eating disorder. It actually alters the gray matter in your brain. And yes, a lot of that is developmental, but you learned these behaviors. So yes, right now, if someone tells you, oh, moderation, like you can have these foods, you can have them around and not eat all of them. But just like you learned that behavior of, oh my goodness, when I do have them in the house, I eat them all. That didn't just happen overnight, whether
you weren't born with that binge trigger.
Yeah.
Born with that.
You still have to unlearn it. There's going to be a lot of discomfort and a lot of working through it mentally, but you can unlearn those behaviors just like you learned them. But it takes a lot of hard work and willingness to go through that.
Sure.
You know?
Sorry for me eating banana. I was like, I had a low blood sugar. I was like, this is going to be so awkward. I have two snacks for the low blood sugar. I was like, one is that, and then one is chocolate covered blueberries.
I was like,
I want to make it clear. I'm like, I shouldn't have brought a banana. I should have like chosen what would people label it.
No, we got to keep that in. We're not cutting that out.
Oh, 1,000%, 100%.
I don't know if you're editing things out. So one thing that I always have in the back of my mind, when I told you I went through cancer, right? A bout of cancer. So when I went through my chemo and stuff, literally the only two foods I could keep down for months were honey buns and McDonald's French fries.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So like when I hear people say, oh, sugar feeds cancer and this and that, I'm like, I beat cancer and all I ate were French fries and honey buns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but still, that's what I think people need to see. Sometimes they need to see those anecdotal experiences because they base everything on top of anecdotal experience.
Yeah, one of my internship rotations was at a Moffitt Cancer Center here in Tampa. It was really interesting working on the different wards and stuff like that.
May I ask you about that real quick? So,
off of sugar.
Because when you were going through, it was through chemo, totally screwed up what you could stomach or not. In those two things, this sounds ridiculous. It reminds me of like when people have like pregnancy cravings, like they need, so that they can't stomach certain foods. They did that to you, I didn't know it did something like that.
Yeah, you form food aversion very similar to like pregnancy food aversions and cravings and stuff like that. Like I love KFC chicken, and there was one time I was like, oh man, I'm craving KFC. I opened it, I smelled it, I instantly ran to the bathroom, threw up, and I didn't touch KFC for probably 4 years after.
Oh no. I didn't know it had that large of an effect on sugars like that. Holy cow. But again, super interesting. As you're going through chemo, honey buns is what you could stomach in McDonald's French fries. Those are two very random. I'm like, now I'm thinking about that combination. I'm like, I would almost throw up just thinking about those two together. But it's weird when you get those cravings. But again, it's like showing that it's not like we've got to get over the labeling of bad, good, healthy, unhealthy. It's ridiculous. It absolutely needs to stop.
I'm sure. I can't even imagine, Zach, but when people go, these foods are going to cause cancer. Like you see the people going through the shelves in the grocery stores. I want about Pop-Tarts and why they cause cancer. It's like, how disconnected are you from reality? I can't even imagine
or when they call them poison.
Yeah.
Poison is it's a strong word. Like I always refer back to doubt poison control has ever received a call because somebody accidentally ingested seed oil or diet soda.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually hilarious.
I think it's crazy to me because, I mean, our food system has so many flaws in it in the U.S. and what we have access to versus what most people don't is an issue. But when there are products and are foods that do potentially cause harm, and you see it in patterns. I remember this happened with protein powders, which are a supplement. They're not regulated, but they found trace amounts of heavy metals in I think like over 100 protein powders. And they found that it was reported, and it was reported to the FDA. So research was funded to actually look at, okay, what are these levels? What are their health effects? Do they go over the upper limit in terms of, okay, this becoming potentially toxic and harmful? No, they don't. Yes, there are issues with regulation understanding, but when there is potentially harm to mass populations of people and you have this pushback, yes, there is going to be a further development into it, because there has to be, or else then you get lawsuits. And
look at trans fats. Like, they've been partially hydrogenated oils have been banned since I think 2018 or something like that.
yeah,
But unfortunately, a lot of people still think that hydrogenated oils are trans fats, and they don't understand that partially hydrogenated, there's a difference. But if anything, that should restore your faith in our regulatory bodies that do oversee the food that we eat and are testing these regularly. But unfortunately, there's so many conspiracy theorists out there that spread this narrative that the government wants to keep us sick because that's what makes them money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think and I would love you to comment on this a bit, it totally dismisses the fact that the issue in the US in terms with food consumption is overconsumption of these ultra-processed foods, minimal consumptions of proteins, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. It's dietary patterns. Again, this has to be consistent. It has to be often in order for you to see an effect on your overall health, and looking at what you eat throughout the day, on the weeks, and the years. And it ignores that fact and doesn't address any interventions for practical lifestyle changes. And yeah, I would just love to hear your thoughts.
The big topic going around on social media right now is, oh, I went and I stayed for 2 weeks in Italy, and I was eating the same foods and the same amount of food, and I lost weight and I feel better and my skin is clear. So being a military veteran and a contractor, I've had the opportunity to live in multiple different countries. And one thing I can tell you is true is we are very sedentary as a nation. And couple that with our portion sizes are 2 to 3 times the size of other countries. Like, when I went to Italy for the first time and I ordered off the menu item, a thing of pasta, when they brought it out, I'm like, where's the rest? What is this? This is an appetizer. I ordered this. I thought this was an entree. Like, their portion sizes are a lot different. They incorporate fruits, veggies, whole grains. There's very few corner stores where you just pop in and order a family size bag of chips. And being a sedentary nation, we have access to these foods daily, and they're sitting in our pantry, and they're so easy and so accessible to where, hey, I'm going to binge watch this show on Netflix. Let me grab that family size bag of Flamin' Hot Cheetos that I just bought. And nobody really practices portion control. They don't sit down and say, oh, let me portion out 1 serving, sit down, enjoy it, and move on with my day. It's eating straight out of a multi-serving bag. There's a lot of variables that go into it. And it just comes down to, like you said, lifestyle choices, our activity level, how many steps we're getting in each day, and portion sizes. That's the biggest factor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think with that.
Go for it. That's right.
I think with that, it's something that I always think about, and James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, really introduced me to this concept of limbic friction in terms of your routine and habits that you perform on the daily. And in some areas, it's a good thing to have a certain amount of limbic friction in terms of these like barriers to performing a habit. So limbic friction being, oh, I have to go walk to the market. I have to walk to the grocery store. That's a good place to have limbic friction. Versus we want to decrease the limbic friction to go exercise. It's a little bit easier to do so, a little bit easier to eat healthy. We have, in America, no limbic friction when it comes to our access to these ultra-palatable foods. And there are really little to no barriers for not moving your body. We don't move, and it's so easy to not move. So I just think that it's super fascinating that you brought that up, because the first thing people go to is, oh, well, we have glyphosate and we use Roundup and all of this. It's like, well, okay.
The limbic friction, that's actually a really good point. Those are something like, there's little steps that you can take within your household to create that and make these hyper palatable foods that are very easy to overconsume and push you in a calorie surplus, make them less accessible. Put them in the back of the pantry behind the whole grain snack versus the flaming hot Cheetos in the back. Make it less accessible. Put it up on the top shelf. Don't leave it out on the counter, kind of out of sight, out of mind. Make it less accessible.
It's absolutely, okay, rounding up it all, because I know this is a more clean eating, like diet focused kind of show, but it's like, goes to show too, it's like health is so much more complicated than any specific thing you're worried about. Is it just your step count? Is it just your movement? Is it just this food? Is it just that? It's such a big picture where it's like all these things matter. And I think that's what you're saying, the rocks. And if you're I don't think we dove deep into what that analogy means, but Zach hit hard on this in a video, right? It's like when you have a jar and you fill it up with rocks. I forget exactly how you did it, but it's the rocks are the principles, right? Your movement, your calorie intake, your things like that. It's like focus on the big movers. Stop focusing on the grains of sand that are this chemical or this molecule in your food or this, or those small things that people are worried about. It's like your health is such a more complicated system than one single thing that could attribute to that. It's absolutely massive.
Yeah.
And I was going to say that too, with a piece to go in and a couple of good questions that we got on our Q&A leading up to this too. After hearing all this and kind of people, I think this honestly, just listening back to this, would feel a lot more comfortable and less it sounds silly, but afraid of food, which a lot of people do have. I think just listening to this kind of would comfort people in there. What is one or two things, just making it simple, what are one or two things that someone can do if they're like, I want to lose weight, I want to do this? What are one or two things people can start to do or be curious about? What action items would you give somebody simply today to act on that? They used to think, I need to eat clean, I need to do this. Now they're a little more comfortable. What can they do as an action item today to make progress?
So the first step I always have people do is figure out their energy needs. Like, I think, again, it comes back to calories in versus calories out, but how do you stay within those calories is the hard part. Like, weight loss is the easiest part of it you'll ever have to do in your life. It's an easy concept, very hard to actually execute. So finding your energy needs, figuring out what foods you can eat each day that fits into that energy window, and giving yourself grace. Like, I think self-grace is an extremely important aspect of weight loss. Like, you can't give up because you had X, Y, and Z food. You can't give up because you strayed off for one day. You can't give up because you had a weekend of binging. Like, just stay as consistent as possible. Meal prep when you can. That kind of takes the guesswork throughout the week. I was on Mike Matthews' podcast and he asked me, if somebody could only meal prep one meal, that's all they have time for, that's all they have patience for, which meal would you recommend? And I always recommend lunch, because especially if you are an out of the house worker, if you go to the office and Bill wants you to go grab some drinks for lunch, he wants to go down to the pub, grab something. Typically when you go out to eat, it's going to be bigger portions, higher calories that are not conducive with your goals. If you take your lunch with you, typically in the back of our mind, we're thinking, I brought my lunch, I have it here, I'll catch you next time. Well, even starting small, meal prepping, one meal, see how you feel. But it really just comes down to finding what works for you. Like, you have to create those sustainable life changes, those sustainable life habits. And ultimately, that's what's going to get you from point A to point B. Like, you have to ditch the crash diets, ditch the magic pills. Like, you have to understand that it's going to take work. Reframe your mindset. Forget the idea of it being quick or easy, because it's not. You have to be willing to put in the work, and you have to be patient. You have to give yourself some grace, be willing to fall, but also be able.
We always say that simple, not easy. It's a simple concept, not easy to actually do.
Yeah.
Which is, honestly, I love that you touched that, because it's something so brushed over. You have to give yourself grace, because for everyone, it's trial and error. It's going to be different for everybody's lifestyle. You're going to try things that do not work. You're going to try meal patterns. You're going to try prepping. You're going to try everything. Some of them are guaranteed to not work. you can't beat yourself up about it. That's part of it. And honestly, look forward, because I think it's all framing. Look forward to failing. Because if you're not, you know you're not doing it. You should be like, oh, hell yeah, I did this wrong. Now I know what to do next time. Failing is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Educate, like your body is educating you. I always say this, okay, I'm worried I'm going on vacation. I'm worried I have a bunch of events coming up and I won't have much control. I'm so excited for that because now you have this under your belt. You're getting in the experience. We're going to learn. It's going to get easier next time. And these are just tools because it's going to happen again and again because life.
Yeah. Disappointment comes from unmet expectations. Like you need to hone in and make those expectations realistic. Like you said, look forward to fail, expect to fail. So when it does happen, you say, I prepared for this. I knew it was coming. This is
you say good instead of crap. I can't believe that happened. Okay, I'm glad you said no one else says that.
Yeah.
I see it all the time and people tell me to shut up. It's setting proper expectations, realistic expectations in any measure of life. I legitimately think is one of the biggest keys in communication, in progress, in any metric. It's based on your expectations. So expect things to go.
Yeah. Relationships, job.
Relationship. If you expect
Everything.
your partner to do XYZ right up here, you're going to be let down and you're going to take that on your partner.
Yeah.
If you don't expect anything in return, be so pleasantly surprised anytime they beat that. It's where you expect it. If you expect to lose 2 pounds a week every single week until you get to your goal, you're going to be bummed. You're going to be depressed. You're going to be sad. You're going to be hurt. If you expect, hey, one day I'll get there. I just want to get better every day. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. Like, oh, I'm closer to my goal this week than I was last week. You're going to be pleasantly surprised. And I think that is such an understatement. So I'm so pumped you said that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like setting expectations. I always say, set your expectations for today. We can have long-term goals. Yeah. They don't need to be too quantitative because the journey to get there is going to be changing all the time. So what are your expectations today? And after you do something that maybe doesn't align with your values and who you are as a person, say binge eating or not really moving much and filling voids where, hey, this didn't really align with me today. How can I do better next time? My expectation today is to learn what I can do for when this situation happens again, because it probably will. And that's how you continue to make health behavior changes that can last, because life is fucking hard. And weight loss can be really mentally, emotionally, physically taxing for so many people. And if you expect it to just be linear, you're already setting yourself up for failure.
I want to know this quote because I absolutely love it. It's from, I think, the Great Mental Models from Farnham Street. It's a big blog. And the map is different than the territory. It goes along as expectation, but I love it. The map is different than the territory. And I hate because it goes back to who you should trust, stuff like this. People who only know the education piece, but don't practice it, don't go through it. They don't know a lot of the things that pop up in real life, right? We can say, go through a calorie deficit, do this, but like you don't know until you go through it. So, cravings are real. The mindset piece is real. All this is real. So it's essentially, you can know what to do, but you're going to experience things on the territory. You can have a perfect map of, let's say I'm going camping this weekend, I have a map on how to get there. There's going to be trees that fall over and this road is closed. There's going to be muddy path where I can't go here anymore. There's going to be rain, which I needed to pack for, which is not on the map. There's things in the territory that aren't on the map. And it goes to that expectation things like expect there to be problems. That's why if you look on Apple Maps and you go to the airport, assume there's going to be traffic, assume there's going to be something there. Because if you just plan on it being perfect, it's not going to be, and it's going to ruin your entire plan. It goes like that. I love it. So Zach, tell us real quick where we can find you, because I know you got a lot of cool things going on. It blows my mind how either free, accessible, or cheap and easy it is to get in these. So I don't understand why not everyone in the world is on it. But tell people where they can find you.
So I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at Zach Coen. TikTok, I post the majority of my content. My meal stuff, I transfer over to YouTube, but I do have a Facebook support group. It's called Safe Space Nutrition. I do have a link for that in my bio on all of my social media outlets. It's a group that's full of amazing freaking people, super supportive. Everybody's on a journey. They're all
There's like
supportive.
21,000 people in there, right?
Talk about everything in there.
Anybody that's looking for progress, free to join that.
100% free. Yeah. And I'm very active in there. It really does live up to its name. It's called Safe Space Nutrition. You can talk about everything in there, your successes, your failures, your fears. It's a judgment-free zone to talk about anything. And then obviously I'm on Patreon for $5 a month. You get access to 4 meal prep recipes exclusive to Patreon. All of my Patreon members do get a free copy of my cookbooks when they come out. So my first cookbook is coming out hopefully by next month. It'll be available for
It's
purchase.
$5 a month. I mean, I just put this in perspective. I get it my Friday treat because I made it through the week. I'm excited. It's podcast day. I work out in the morning. I go to Copa Vida restaurant right outside of the ballpark, downtown San Diego. I order a burrito, right? A little bacon burrito, low arugula, extra bacon. I always say it's $12. The price of bacon, if I want extra bacon, is $5 to add to my burrito. I added bacon to my burrito for $5. You spend $5. If you want some bomb freaking ideas to implement into your meal prep, hit up Patreon and you get the free cookbooks when they come out. It's $5.
So if you're listening and you are serious about wanting to start meal prepping, if you do follow my recipes, my keys are always low calorie, high protein. I shop at Walmart. I do BOGO. I show you what ingredients I use. All of my recipe videos come with a downloadable PDF so you can follow along. But the average person who starts meal prep, they save on average $50 to $100 a month on their grocery bill just by switching over to my meal preps. And a lot of people have come and said, hey, I don't even meal prep. I use your recipes because I have a big family and I use your recipes for dinner. And this was a cheap dinner for my family.
We really didn't talk about meal prep at all on this podcast, even though it's like, which is kind of funny because leading into it, that's what I thought we were going to do like days ago before we connected. I'm so much happier that we talked about this. But if you do have, especially body composition goals, I'm even at like a maintenance phase where I'm pumped with where I'm at composition wise. I'm not trying to lose weight, gain weight. It is so underspoken of how important just being prepared is and having simple and especially affordable meal prep. Again, the friction that weight loss causes, like the things that get in the way, that makes it an insane amount easier just to have meals ready for you.
And I think something that not a lot of people talk about is decision fatigue. When you are on a weight loss journey, like decision fatigue is a very real problem. And I really think that meal prepping, when you know what you're going to be eating throughout the week, it alleviates kind of some of that stress that is brought on by what am I going to eat today? What am I going to eat today? What's for lunch? What's for snack? What's for dessert? When you have these things planned ahead of time, the decision fatigue is attenuated.
Yeah. You always have that option if you want to really want to eat out and you could, but I meal prepped all these foods. I love them. They're delicious. They're here. I'm going to eat these first. But it also allows you to make the mindful decision of, I really know that I love my meal prep and I have this, but I really want to eat out tonight. It allows you to make those decisions with more than just one option of, I have no food I'm going to eat out, or I don't want to.
Yeah, and I hate boring food. I make food that I actually want to eat. I make cheesy pastas, Alfredos, like things that I make
Chipotle bowl,
like forgot using instant.
I was going to say
Chipotle bowl that I've been told tastes better.
I was going to say from experience, I'm like, this is not. I feel like when people think meal prep, they picture a freaking container with rice and chicken and some sort of vegetable in it. No, these are bar meals, high protein, low calorie, actually taste good. I'm like, this is not just meal prep. This is big. Thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you all for supporting the podcast as we start up on socials, TikTok, Instagram. It's fs.pod. Our YouTube is where you can catch the video along with Spotify, and that's where we post everything as well. We just got a Twitter that we're coming on with. And Marianna, what did I forget? Because I know I always do. Anything, or did I nail it?
Just make sure you subscribe. We release new episodes every Friday and Monday.
There we go. Tony's on fire. Is that extra $5? $5 for bacon. Bro, I was pissed. Okay.